Hi, I'm Matt, and this is my dad, Emeritus Professor Charles Griffiths. He's an expert in marine biology and has found a ton of new species. And together, we're going to explore the shore.
Okay, Matt, let's sit down here and we can just have a look at this rock. So we're up in the higher intertidal here, and this part of the intertidal is completely dominated by barnacles. In fact, it's called the Barnacle or balanoid zone after a genus of barnacles. So these are barnacles here, typical cone-shaped, completely stuck onto the rock, and they look like mollusks. They look like limpets. And in fact, in the very early days, they were actually classified as being a type of mollusk. But in reality, these are crustaceans, they're shrimps. So the best way to describe them is that they're shrimps that are stuck to the rock by their noses, and then they beat their legs into the water.
To catch food?
To catch food, exactly,
okay.
Yeah. The larva of the barnacle does look like a real shrimp. So if you see the larva, there's no mistaking.
When the shrimps breed, they
go back to...
And they go to a larval stage, which is a shrimp.
Yeah, they go to a larval stage that definitely looks like a crustacean. It has little legs and segments, and it swims around. If it can smell another barnacle, it'll swim towards that, and then it goes down and settles on the rock, and then it does a little circular dance. And that circular dance is to ensure that there's enough space for it to glue down and to grow. So if it does a little circular dance and it doesn't bump into another barnacle,
then it just sticks there for the rest of its life. It knows it's a good spot.
And then it sticks itself down onto the rock by its nose, and it secretes these shells. So there can be 4, 6 or 8 shells in the circle. So this particular one here, which is called the volcano barnacle, has 4 shells in the circle. They're not actually very easy to distinguish because of all these ridges. So there's a little juvenile. It's settled down next to this group of adults here, and then as they grow, they secrete these hard calcareous shells around themselves, and these act as insulation. So the animal is able to close off this little aperture at the top there.
Okay, so that's a dead one which you've pulled off the rocks, but I see a lot of air, like there's a lot of holes in its shell.
So that central cavity is where the animal would be living, and then the shell has these holes in it which are filled with air, and air is an extremely good insulator, a bit like polystyrene. And they keep the animal cool, and it can sit there, and of course it also takes less energy to make a structure like this than to make a solid shell. So it's a very effective mechanism. Okay, we're here in the barnacle zone of the shore, almost completely monopolized by barnacles. But there are 2 different types of barnacle here. There's this one, the 8-shelled barnacle, and that tends to live in the lower and more wave-exposed areas. And it actually is a passive feeder. It puts its arm out and it lets the waves swash by, lets the waves do the work and filter the material onto its arms. The 4-shelled barnacle here, or volcano barnacle, is an active feeder. It lives in the more sheltered areas, and then it actually has to row its arms like this through the water. When you're seeing it here now at low tide, of course it's in its inactive stage. But when the tide comes in and it's covered with water, then 4 little plates that close up this aperture pull back, and the animal puts its legs out, and its legs are just like feathers. So then it goes like this with its feather-like appendages, scoops material, filters material out of the water, brings its appendages in, and then just licks off the appendages to get the food, and then does it again. So I do about 6 or 8 strokes and then lick. Its legs have basically become adapted into these feather-like feeding appendages. But the disadvantage, of course, of being stuck down like this is that you can't wander off and find a mate. Because they're crustaceans, they have a penis and they have to mate with another individual. And that's pretty tricky if you can't get up and wander across.
How did they do that?
So they got a neat trick to overcome that, and that is that they have the longest penis of any animal in the animal world. So the penis is 2 to 3 times the body length, and then the male can immerse its penis out of the hole, and then it reaches around and it can reach any female that's within like 2 body lengths of itself. So this one here could be able to reach any one of these ones in this little group here. And then the larvae just are ejected out into the water, swim around, and the whole cycle starts again.